and our dear friend Scott Ritter is here with us. Welcome back, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
Please hit the like button, helping us reaching more people. And Scott, let me start with what has happened with the tanker called, with the oil tanker called Marinera. The Russian Ministry of Transport they have they have published some sort of comments on the seizure of this tanker in the Atlantic. They say on December 24th, 2025, the tanker Marinera received temporary authorization to sail under the Russian state flag, issued in accordance with the Russian law and international legal norms. Today, around 3 p.m. Moscow time, the U.S. naval force boarded the vessel on the high seas outside of outside the territorial waters of any state. Contact with the ship was subsequently lost under the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. The high sea are governed by the principle of freedom of navigation. No state has the right to use force against vessels lawfully registered under the jurisdiction of another state. What is going on in the mind of the Trump administration, and what was the necessity of doing this, Scott?
Well, first of all, we need to understand that the Trump administration is a rogue government at this point in time. It doesn't operate in accordance with the rule of law. And they all but admit it. They say we are about might makes right. What strength will allow us to do, we will do. Marco Rubio has said that international law just doesn't matter. The United Nations doesn't matter. The United Nations Charter doesn't matter. None of the legal frameworks that hold the world together matter anymore. The only thing that matters is American power, American might. And it's just so flagrant. When you have the ambassador of the United States to the United Nations in the Security Council say that, America will determine how Venezuelan oil is used, who gets to buy it, who doesn't get to buy it. There's no basis in law for this. The kidnapping of Maduro is a blatantly illegal act. And we've now committed an act of piracy on the open seas. And that's what it is. It's piracy. There is no legal framework that allows this to happen. And the U.S. court systems have been corrupted because apparently the Coast Guard was acting on a warrant that was issued by the Southern District of New York, allowing them to seize this ship. But there is no constitutional authority for this warrant. Let's just make it clear that the United States is bound by treaties that have been signed by presidents, ratified by the United States Senate, and therefore, under the Constitution of the United States, become the supreme law of the land. There has been no congressional legislation passed that modifies these treaties in a way to give the courts a hook, because the only time the courts have a hook is if Congress has taken legislative action, and now the courts get to determine the constitutionality of the interpretation of the treaty as it deals with congressional legislation. But void of congressional legislation, the treaty is the supreme law of the land. And when you take a look at the various Supreme Court decisions that have been passed on this very issue, I think there was one that was passed in 1884. Justice Miller, I think, was the author of this. But basically, he said, look, when you have a treaty and you have treaty disputes, basically treaties come down to the honor and the intent of the nations involved, and the interests, of the nations involved. The United States has no honor anymore, none whatsoever. There is no honor, and our interests are purely selfish. And so basically at this juncture, problems about treaties are resolved by war. I just want to point this out. This is not a law enforcement operation that's taking place. There is no law to be enforced here. This is a rogue operation, an act of piracy. The consequence is either the capitulation of Russia or war. That's what it comes down to. The United States has determined that it alone will, decide how Venezuelan oil is, dealt with on the open market. So we've imposed sanctions that have no weight under international law. We don't get to launch an embargo of Venezuela is an act of war. Literally an act of war. This isn't figurative. This isn't hyperbole. It's a literal act of war. So if we are enforcing an embargo, a blockade of Venezuela, then we've declared war. But did you see Congress declare war? No, because the president says, I don't need to go to Congress. I'm the frickin' dictator. I am Donald Trump. And he acts as a not just virtual. He is a dictator. Congress has punted. There is no congressional roadblock whatsoever. And the courts have punted because they're doing whatever he wants, regardless of what the Constitution says. So the United States has ceased functioning as a constitutional republic. And today we function as a dictatorship run by this cult of personality called Donald Trump. What Donald wants, Donald gets. I mean, and it's become absurd. When we have people talking about the Monroe Doctrine, they go, it's the Don Roe Doctrine. I mean, is this a Saturday Night Live skit? I mean, is this what America's become? A frickin' joke? A running joke? I mean, we have senators of the United States, Lindsey Graham comes to mind, just joyfully bleeding. I mean, having an orgasm live on TV as he thinks about the fact that he now has a president that just throws the rule of law out. And this is a man who sits, as the chair of the Judiciary Committee of the Senate. This is what I mean. We don't function as a constitutional republic anymore. This is an act of war, an act of piracy. Let's see what Russia does. I mean, I just wrote a piece and, I'm an American. I love my country, but my country is a constitutional republic, not a rogue nation carrying out acts of piracy. And a Coast Guard ship that has boarded a Russian flagged vessel, lawfully flagged vessel in open seas is a pirate vessel. And I said, it's time to smack the camel in the nose. And what I mean by that, there's an old Middle East saying that once the camel sticks its nose under the tent, if you don't stop it, it's in the tent. And the United States right now is sticking its nose under the tent of the rule of law. We're basically saying that there is no rule of law. And if someone doesn't smack us in the nose and cause us to pull back, we will start doing anything. I mean, there is no stopping us. Once we do, I mean, I have to laugh at Europe right now. Oh, we're supporting this action, the act of piracy. Yeah, what are you going to do tomorrow when Trump takes over Greenland? Because it's the same thing, guys. Once you allow him to do this, he's just going to keep doing it. It's time for the camel to get smacked on the nose, because if we don't, we're looking at World War III. Because this won't end until American boots are on the ground in Ukraine, because Donald Trump will continue to push what are American interests. And eventually he'll just deem that the Russians are bluffing, and he'll put American troops on the ground in Ukraine, and then we all die. So this is a very serious thing. This is an extremely serious thing. It's an act of aggression. It's an illegal act of piracy. And it sickens me as an American to believe that, men and women in the uniform of the United States military are executing these orders. That warrant is not a lawful document, because no U.S. court can authorize an act of piracy. And yet that's what they've done.
Scott, what is the outcome of kidnapping the president of Venezuela? What is the outcome, and what was the desired outcome for the Trump administration? Are they going to achieve that?
Well, understand that it didn't happen in a vacuum. I mean, they already achieved. What do you mean, are they going to achieve it? They got him. He's ours. We own him.
Yeah.
He's in a prison right now.
But the outcome, I want to see the big picture of what would be the outcome, the way that the United States, what does the United States want from Venezuela that under the Maduro, administration, they couldn't achieve that. That's why they're
No.
doing this.
You're missing the whole point. To have a Maduro administration means that the United States recognizes sovereignty. The United States published a national security strategy document in November of 2025, and everybody poo-pooed it. I laugh in the face of these people. Yeah, I just have to apologize, Naeem. I've come to the point right now where I just don't care about ignorance anymore. I hate stupidity. And there's a whole bunch of really stupid people out there right now who think they know what the hell's going on, and they don't. When they published that document, I said, this is a real document. Oh, no, it's not. It's just Trump blowing smoke. No, it's a real document and it's real policy and it's being implemented as we speak. And that document said that America is going to create Fortress America in the Western Hemisphere and that we own everything. Read the document very carefully. We own all the resources of the Western Hemisphere. Whether you agree with me or not, it doesn't. We own Canadian oil. Wake up, Canada. We own your oil. You're not going to get to sell that oil on the open market the way you think you want to. You will sell that oil the way we tell you. We own Greenland. We haven't taken it over formally, but we're going to. We own the Panama Canal. Oh, China, that $1.3 billion port that you built in Chancay, Peru, we own that. We own all the train networks that you've put in there. We own the lithium triangle, where 60% of the world's lithium is contained between Argentina, Chile, and I think Bolivia, maybe. But, we own all this. We say we own it. These resources cannot be used by outside powers, by non-hemispheric powers. So what are we doing in Venezuela? We're putting the marker down. We own Venezuela. We own everything about Venezuela. And we're telling Colombia, we own you too. We're telling Mexico, we own you too. We're telling everybody, we own you. And if you choose to operate in a manner that implies independence of operation outside of American domination, then we will take your leaders and we will punish you. The CIA has done a tremendous amount of preparatory work in Venezuela. It hasn't come out yet. We bought off the military. I mean, there's going to be hell to pay once the investigations are done. You could see a civil war in Venezuela because there are 100 people died. I mean, this was not, going in and grabbing somebody coming out. We murdered 100 people. 32 of them were Cuban security forces who apparently didn't have night vision goggles. So when the United States turned out the lights and Delta Force streamed in with their night vision goggles, they didn't stand a chance. They wounded 7 Delta guys because they fired haphazardly, but Delta fires with precision and killed everybody. But apparently we killed everybody. I mean, servants, civilian servants in the house, they died. Civilians on the street who got in the way of the suppressive fire laid down on various sites throughout Caracas, they died. We slaughtered 100 people to capture this guy. We don't care about human life. We simply don't care. There's not a tear shed in America for any of the people that were murdered by the Joint Special Operations Command in carrying out this raid. We will kill Colombians. We will kill Mexicans. We will kill Canadians. We will kill Greenlanders. We will kill anybody who gets in our way. This is where we stand as the United States of America. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting because I've always believed that America should be the most powerful nation in the world because we need to prevail in any legitimate conflict. But what we have, that power is always constrained by the Constitution. And our status as a constitutional republic, our status as a nation governed by the rule of law, not just domestically, but in terms of our interaction with the global community. And I just want to remind your audience that the United Nations Charter is a treaty that's been signed by an American president, ratified by 2/3 of the United States Senate, and therefore, under the Constitution, is the supreme law of the land. So anytime you hear an idiot like Marco Rubio or people in your chat or anybody else saying, the international law doesn't matter, fuck off. It matters. It's real. And without it, we live in a jungle. And the United States today, when you hear Marco Rubio say, the United Nations doesn't matter, what he's saying is, I have no respect for the Constitution of the United States of America. Because there is due process. If we decide that the United Nations Charter is incompatible with the United States, with the constitutional republic called the United States, then we do things like withdraw from the Charter. Or we pass legislation to modify the treaty, which we're allowed to do. And we can do things like that. But just to sit there and say it's no longer convenient to us, so we're just going to do that means that we are no longer a constitutional republic, that the rule of law doesn't matter. And every American has to understand it. This is why ICE roams the streets of American cities today and detains American cities without fear of consequence, because the rule of law doesn't matter. We've allowed this narcissist, this Caligula, this cult of personality to basically say what I want, I get, and nobody gets in his way, domestically and now internationally. This is why I believe that the camel needs to be punched in the nose. Russia, sink the fucking Coast Guard ship. Send a signal. Draw a line. Because if you don't, the camel's going to be in the tent. And then it's all over. Then it's World War III.
Yeah, I think we are heading toward that sort of confrontation. It seems that Russia was so much patient about what's going on, but how long do you see Russia being that patient not to confront the United States?
It's a
You know,
fundamental question because, you know, I just wrote a piece called The Sanctions Shield. And in it, I talk about, the threat of sanctions. And the United States has used sanctions. Initially, I used to believe that sanctions was, when you enacted sanctions, it meant you don't have a policy. We don't know what to do, so sanction them. Buy time while we figure it out. But what we've found out is that over time, the sanctions doesn't weaken the society the way we want it to. The idea was to get the people to hold their government accountable. What we found is, though, that sanctions, especially those that target the political and economic elites who previously enjoyed a good working relationship with the West, with the United States, that these sanctions, if you put the pain on them and then you dangle the prospects of the lifting of sanctions, you've now created leverage in that society. And that was the fatal mistake that Venezuela made. You saw Maduro bend over backwards to try and make arrangements with Chevron. I mean, what Maduro should have done the moment the United States sanctioned it is nationalize the totality of Venezuelan oil, nationalize the totality, and sell Chevron's assets to China for $1 and say, China, you own this now. America, you fucked around, you found out. You came at us, we just obviated you. You don't matter anymore. It is owned by China. And now you force the United States to take a bigger. But what happened is, no, he went, hey, let's play around. Let's work with Chevron. Let's work with the United States. Let's make deals. Why? Because the United States had hurt a segment of his population, political and economic elites. And instead of confronting those elites and saying, under no circumstances do we deal with the devil, he said, no, let's dance with the devil. Let's play the game on the hopes that the devil's actually playing a real game by the rules and that they'll lift the sanctions and all this wealth will come back in and you guys can get back to the standard of living. Everything will be good. Maduro can dance in the street again and all that kind of stuff. But that's not how the United States plays, because we lure the possibility of, we dangle the possibility of the lifting of sanctions, and then we just slam the door. And then we blame it on Maduro and we say it's his fault. And now the political and economic elites go, hey, Maduro, he's to blame. And the CIA comes in and goes, hey, guys, we can help you out here. You help us get rid of Maduro. And man, we got bank accounts right now with money in it. Here's the bank account. That's your name. There's a lot of money in there. And there'll be more money once the oil starts to flow. All you have to do is play the game. And sadly, Venezuelan traders took the CIA dollar. This is what's happening in Iran, by the way. I just want to make this point very, very clear that the Iranian government, Pezeshkian, I don't condemn the man. I mean, he knows that sanctions hurt. Sanctions hurt. And instead of saying, suck it up, Iran, we ain't caving ever. We will make the adjustments necessary, but we will never again work with the West, ever again. Take that off the plate. He went, no. We've got to make good with the West. Shit, that's your mistake, dude, because the second you did that, you created hope in the eyes of certain political and economic elites in Iran that there could be better days ahead if the sanctions are lifted. And then when the United States says, but it's the government of Iran's fault for the sanctions not being lifted, you've created that point of leverage. And now the CIA and other intelligence services, Israel, the Dutch, the British, are in there leveraging this false hope of economic largesse into opposition to remove the government of Iran. The government of Iran is to blame for this, 100%. I mean, I don't condone what's happening, but it's their fault. They created this condition, just like Maduro did. And look, Russia's doing the same thing. Vladimir Putin, he was given a gift, the gift of sanctions, because the sanctions against Russia are so absolute that Russia created a sanctions shield that basically said that in order for us to survive, we have to live outside any notion of economic interaction with the West. And they created these links, they redid things themselves. But then Kirill Dmitriev came in, and I'm not saying the man is the fifth column, but he is. He's a Goldman Sachs banker who runs the sovereign wealth fund of Russia, a wealth fund that depends upon Western economic methodologies to thrive. The Putin should have shut it down and turned it over to a Russian and said, run it Russian style. We don't want Goldman Sachs bankers anymore. I'm sorry, Kirill, here's your pension. Go pound sand. But instead, Kirill came in and said, hey, we can work with the West here. Why don't we offer them, these economic relationships, exploitation of the Arctic, helping us with oil exploitation in the north, the rare earth minerals, all these things we can do. Once sanctions are lifted, we're cut a deal in Ukraine, but the sanctions will be great. And then he started working with Steve Witkoff, who is Donald Trump's boy, not a diplomacy guy, an economic guy. But Trump never, ever, ever wanted to do any of the things Kirill Dmitriev wants. He's not serious about it. The Russians have committees and organizations that get together and they have plans. The United States has squat. They have Witkoff and Jared Kushner, a Zionist who wants to, turn Gaza into a Mediterranean vacation spot. That's the depth of his analysis. Meeting with Kirill Dmitriev, talking pie in the sky crap. And the problem is, this gets published in Russia, and then Russian political and economic elites go, we want that. We can make money off of this. This would be a good thing. And they start putting pressure on Vladimir Putin to make good with the West. No, you had a shield, a sanctions shield. Never, ever deal with the West, Vladimir Putin. Never. Not now. Not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a man who lacks honor. No deal with Donald Trump will ever be manifested the way you think it will be. It's a one-way street. The deal is only good so far as Donald Trump personally is enriched by it, politically or economically. And the moment the deal becomes inconvenient, Trump will walk. That's his entire business relationship. Go back to his time as a New York realtor. Go back to his time in Atlantic City with the casino. The man's a living, walking piece of shit who literally uses the rules to make money to his sole benefit. He doesn't care about establishing a viable business. He doesn't care about, mutually beneficial relationships. It's a one-way street. That's it. Donald Trump, one way. And he's now the president of the United States, and he's making the United States behave in this fashion. Vladimir Putin needs to shut Kirill Dmitriev down now. Stop it. And tell everybody in Russia, don't even think about economic relations with the West. That isn't going to happen ever. And if you want it to happen, get the hell out of the country. Leave now. Leave your money here, but get out of here. I'm not dealing with it. Shut it down now. Because if you don't, the United States will find a way. The CIA will always find a way to whisper sweet nothings into the ears of people who are looking for a better way of life, the quick way out, the path to riches. And when that happens, there will be opposition in Russia. And, I'm not saying the Russian government can't control it, but why do you want to open the door to this crap? Shut it down now. But they haven't. And it's a sign of, I don't want to say weakness, but it's a sign of bad thinking. Vladimir Putin is getting bad advice from people. If anybody's telling Vladimir Putin that there's a potential for the spirit of Alaska to manifest itself, there is no potential for the spirit of Alaska. The spirit of Alaska was always a fraud. Never forget this. The person briefing Donald Trump as he was going in for the meeting was a CIA officer, the former national intelligence officer for Russia and Eurasia, who hated Donald Trump, was part of the 2016 effort to, undermine Donald Trump, who hates Vladimir Putin, who hates Russia. Do you really think this person was giving Donald Trump realistic analysis about Russia? Or was this person advising Donald Trump on how you can use the Alaska summit to your own benefit? What do you need the Russians to commit to walk away? And it worked. Trump didn't give anything away in Alaska, but what he got from the Russians was a commitment to the spirit of Alaska. And that opened the door for the continued dialogue between Dmitriev and Witkoff, which then creates this notion of the possibility of economic largesse if sanctions could just be lifted. It was a scam the whole time. Donald Trump played Vladimir Putin. And I think it's time for Vladimir Putin to wake up and understand that that's exactly what happened. You got played by Trump, by Witkoff, by Dmitriev. Whether Dmitriev was winning or not, I'm not going to malign the patriotism of Kirill Dmitriev, but he's a Goldman Sachs banker. This is what he does. He makes deals. He doesn't make deals, like you and I make a deal, a handshake deal, where it's based on reality. He deals with massive movements of money that enrich select elites. And that's what he's done. He created the potential for certain elites in Russia to make a whole bunch of money. And we're talking about governors. We're talking about, heads of cities, heads of corporations. All these people are lining up to play this game. And these are people who have political power. And now they're disappointed because the trillions of dollars they thought they were going to make isn't going to be made. And Dmitriev's left holding an empty bag, but so too is Vladimir Putin. Shut it down now, President Putin. Shut it down now. There is no spirit of Alaska. Never was. It was always a scam. And you're being scammed right now. And if you don't believe that, take a look at your frickin' ship just boarded by American pirates in the North Atlantic.
Scott, we had, since Donald Trump came to, was elected in the United States, there were two major escalation between Russia and the West. One of them was in the attack on nuclear bombers before the war between Iran and Israel breaking out. And the second one was the attack before the operation in Venezuela, the attack on Putin's residence. These are huge. Looking at the curve, the attack on bombers right now is major escalation attacking on Putin. And what is going on in the mind of Russian analysts close to Vladimir Putin? How do they realize, how do they understand the situation with the Trump administration? Because we know if something happens to Vladimir Putin, we're going to have a nuclear war. There is no way out. Whoever going to replace him, he's going to bring a nuclear war. He's going to attack London. He's going to attack all these decision makers in Europe. What is your take on that? And how far they want to go?
Well, I mean, this is one of the fundamental discussions. This is why I go to Russia, just so everybody understands, so I can have these conversations and talk to people. I just finished doing a very lengthy interview with Sergei Karaganov. He's a prominent Russian political scientist. He's a man who's very anti Russian interaction with the West. He believes that Russia should pivot to the East and work with China, that there's no future for Russia in the West because the West is an untrustworthy negotiating partner. He's 100% correct. But here's the thing. He believes that the West is bluffing. I mean, he's a prominent believer. He doesn't believe in nuclear disarmament. This is where he and I have clashed in the past because I'm an advocate, or at least I have been. I don't know where I stand today. I'm an advocate for meaningful disarmament. But from the Russian perspective, how could you possibly get involved in meaningful disarmament with an American negotiating partner who's untrustworthy? Because the key to disarmament is the mutual benefit of the pact and the binding nature of the pact. And the United States just can't be trusted at all. And so rather than limit your nuclear force, I mean, if anything, the behavior of the United States promotes the notion of Russia enhancing its nuclear deterrent, expanding its nuclear capabilities. Not the direction I want to go, but I understand it. But Karaganov believes that the United States is bluffing, that the United States will never use nuclear weapons to defend Europe, and that if Europe continues to pose an existential threat to Russia, that Russia should use nuclear weapons against Europe. And he wrote a piece a couple of years ago where he said the United States is not willing to trade Boston for Poznan meaning that Russia can drop a nuke on Poznan and the United States will do nothing. That's a hell of a statement, a hell of a gamble. And this is a man who has sat next to Vladimir Putin. This is a man who participates in the Valdai Club. And people listen to this and they say, "Oh, that's the hardliners advising Vladimir Putin." But I think that we need to understand that Sergei Karaganov is not the government. That the Russian government is actually acting as if they believe that the United States would use nuclear weapons to defend Europe, and that Russia is vulnerable to American nuclear weapons attack. And there's a huge hesitancy inside Russia, a weakness that's being exploited successfully by the United States and Europe. I mean, Russia keeps, publishing red lines that keep getting crossed, and people like myself and others assess and say, well, that's because Vladimir Putin's very pragmatic, and that ultimately he's going to do what needs to be done to get the job done, come hell or high water. And if Europe pushes him, then he could use nuclear weapons. But I think this is up to debate right now. I mean, I haven't made a conclusion. I'm not sitting here calling Vladimir Putin, a flake. I personally believe that he's not. But I do believe that he's being advised by people anybody who believes in the spirit of Alaska today should be fired. There is no spirit of Alaska. That is the spirit of submission, the spirit of surrender. And now the Russians need to, reflect on the reality of this rogue nation, the United States, and how do you contain this rogue nation? You don't contain it through friendship. You don't contain it through diplomacy. You contain it through strength. That's the only thing the United States understands is strength. It will act where it senses weakness. And right now, the fact that the United States boarded a Russian flag tanker in an act of piracy means they sense weakness on the part of Russia. And they will continue to push as long as they perceive weakness. Russia, at some point in time, needs to have a demonstration of strength. And sadly, this probably means some sort of military conflict with the United States, hopefully contained. But again, you committed an act of piracy against a Russian ship. The penalty for pirates is usually being sunk. I'm not promoting that. I'm an American. I don't want any harm to come to Americans. But my God, the Coast Guard just committed an act of piracy. It's time for Russia to draw a line and say, no more. You've gone as far as you're going to go. From here on in, if you take an action, there will be a Russian military response, and we're willing to take it as far as you want to go. I mean, if you'd like me, I can put my entire strategic nuclear force on, combat alert, if you want to play that game. Right now, the United States believes that Russia will never do this, that Russia has no intention of doing this. Russia can't do it. And so the United States is going to push and push and push. And you have insane people like Pete Hegseth, who just thinks that, my God, because we put 200 JSOC personnel in the Caracas, we can do anything. Now we put some JSOC people on board a Russian tanker. We can do anything. And you have people like Scott Bessent who actually believe that we can sanction Russia into collapse. And that's what he is doing. Trump has not embraced a policy of lifting sanctions on Russia. Trump has embraced a policy of sanctioning Russia into collapse. That is the policy of the Trump administration. Russia needs to wake up to this, and that is, in fact, the policy. We aren't looking for a way out of Ukraine. We're looking to defeat Russia strategically in Ukraine, and we're doing that by dragging this conflict out. And blaming this on Putin, saying the sanctions can't be lifted because of this in hopes of generating a fifth column inside Russia for that purpose. What does Vladimir Putin have to think about today? Let's look back on this now. The drone attack against Russian strategic nuclear bombers was an attack that was carried out by the Central Intelligence Agency together with MI6. The CIA has been working with Ukrainian intelligence since 2015 to develop resources inside Russia for these very kinds of attack. To carry out an attack like this, it requires, the ability to identify facilities of interest, to be able to rent them, operate them under the radar, to acquire vehicles. Look, it's called advanced force operations. You're in Iran right now. You do know what we did in Iran before the failed hostage rescue attempt. We sent in a special operations team covertly. Dick Meadows led it. They rented warehouses. They rented trucks. They rented safe houses. And they drove these trucks around. They did reconnaissance. And basically, Delta Force was supposed to take helicopters, land outside of Tehran. The trucks were to meet Delta Force, and the Delta Force would be trucked in on Iranian trucks to the embassy, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where they would launch their assault. And then the helicopters would come in, lift them out, take them to an airfield that would be seized by the Rangers, et cetera. But we had people on the ground in Iran doing this. Fred, I can't remember, Arouge, I think his last name was. He was an Air Force junior enlisted man at the time, Iranian, a Persian speaker. He was with them as a linguist. He got left behind. I mean, when the thing went bad, he got left behind. And Fred had to make his way out on his own. He made it to Turkey, but, if he got caught, death. I later met Fred. Fred became a helicopter pilot for Task Force 160 for the U.S. Army Special Operations Forces, and he flew missions with me in Iraq as a weapons inspector. But the point is, this is what we do. This is how we operate. The CIA and the British understand, again, the decade of 1990s, we bought everybody, especially the British. The British went out and bought everybody, and they put them on the payroll. And there is a significant system in place in Russia today that the CIA controls. These are safe houses. These are the ability to generate income if necessary under the radar. So you don't have infusions of capital that can be traced. You have people working, earning money, banking that money. So it's there in the system. So when you rent a warehouse, you're not receiving $10,000 from outside that's then used to rent away and raising a red flag. You're just another business person renting a warehouse. And that's what they did. And then they built a drone production factory. And next thing you know, they launched this attack against Russian strategic. This was a test of Russia, because Russia had published, a strategic nuclear doctrine that said if you attack our nuclear infrastructure, we're going to huff and puff and blow your house down. And Russia did jack shit. Russia went, oh, okay, we're going to shrug it off as a non-event. It was a test. Now, apparently, Donald Trump calls up Vladimir Putin, gets a phone conversation with him, and then says, hey, hang on, I'll call you back. and then authorizes a drone attack that could only have taken place with the CIA and support. And at the same time, just so you understand, we were hoping something would happen, because the CIA had already worked with the New York Times and Wall Street Journal weeks in advance to prepare a story published that day. Guys, you do understand that didn't happen by accident. The New York Times published a piece that was based upon the CIA giving away deep, dark secrets about how they operate and what they're doing in Ukraine. And they published it the same day because it was supposed to be the CIA's plan, got Putin or scared Putin or make Putin run, but it's something that's been going on a long time. Instead, they had to modify, saying, but we've been doing this. Vladimir Putin was targeted by Donald Trump. There's no other way to spin this. No other way to spin this. Donald Trump targeted Vladimir Putin. Maybe not with the intent to kill, because, Trump's like, well, we didn't target his residence, just a facility nearby. So what signal were you trying to send, Donald, to strike a facility nearby? That I can get you anytime I want to, and therefore you need to piss your pants every time America says jump. You need to say how high, Mr. President. Caligula, what do you want me to do? That was the signal he's trying to send to Putin. Now, apparently the Russians were smarter and they caught him out. And the Russians know this is the thing. The Russians turned over a chip to the defense attaches that has data on it that proves that they were targeting Vladimir Putin, and it proves who was providing the intelligence. I mean, I could spend a long time telling you how this gets reverse engineered. The Russians handed over an intact chip, and they just said, we'd like you to take a look at it. But what the Russians are really saying is, we know everything. We know everything. We know what you did. All right, so now they sent that signal, but unless that's backed up with something, it's meaningless because Trump's, this cult of personality is surrounded by nothing but yes men. Ha ha ha, Mr. President, we almost got him. Good job, Mr. President. You sure showed him a thing or two. The CIA's patting itself on the back, headsets saying, see how strong we are. Rubio's like, yeah, I'm not afraid of Russia, and all this stuff. You have to respect Vladimir Putin because he is a sober leader, a sober-minded leader, a pragmatic leader, but he's dealing with a madman, a literal madman, who right now there are no checks and balances to the actions of this madman. Again, I'm not here to advise the president of Russia, but I am here to tell him as an expert analyst, you're being played like a fool by the president of the United States. I hope you understand that, you accept it, and you take appropriate actions. But if you believe for a second that there's the spirit of Alaska, if you believe for a second that this is just the bad influences on Trump, that Steve Witkoff can appeal to the better side, Witkoff is part of the problem. He's not part of the solution. Witkoff is empowering a fifth column inside Russia that's designed to take you down, Mr. President. You've been warned.
Scott, you've been to Russia. How did you find the differences in this part of society? You've just mentioned a little bit of what's going on in Russia and Witkoff, the role of Witkoff and his team to somehow make differences within the society. But how influential that could be for a Russian president? I'm talking about internally, inside Russia.
How could this be weaponized against Putin?
Yeah, exactly. How is that possible to weaponize that against Vladimir Putin? Because we know the system. The system is so.
Let's say you're the governor of Novosibirsk Oblast region, your most powerful economic engine in Russia, and this opportunity that Witkoff is dangling out there, that Dmitry is dangling out there, has the potential of giving you the ability to control contracts, control development, and suddenly you're looking at your future going, man, Vladimir Putin is 70 some odd years old. I'm 40s. I could be the next president of Russia. I could become the economic engine of Russia. I could be the guy that Putin turns to, and I could be the next president. And so I'm all excited about this. And now you've planted that thought in his head that he's relevant, that he's somebody, and begins talking to people, other people, including the FSB, the local FSB. They use them then to silence opposition, which they're doing right now. And it's not just Novosibirsk, but it's others. The second you start talking about the development of Russian resources, the governors, the local government of the regions that have those resources have a vested interest in this possibility, because a lot of that potential is dormant right now because Russia lacks the capacity to act on its development. If you're running the economy and you're saying, gosh, if we continue this war, we're going to have to transition to a war economy at some point in time. And that's going to impact markets that I've been making money off of, that all my friends are making money off of. It's going to require a tightening of the belt that's going to cause me to be diminished, because right now I have a lot of influence because I'm the money person. I can make money happen, and suddenly I'm not anymore. all these people now start talking to each other. And, what happens is that, Vladimir Putin starts finding out that there's a shadow government. There's people conspiring behind his back, that maybe instructions he's given aren't being carried out to the full effect. Maybe the military starts questioning, his guidance, his leadership. This isn't happening now. I don't believe. I think Vladimir Putin still, has tremendous support. But this is what could happen. This is what the CIA is trying to make happen. It's been what the CIA has been trying to do ever since Vladimir Putin came into office. And they were successful with Navalny, Nemtsov. All these people were all CIA assets, bought and paid for. But the Russians, through their foreign agent law, was able to shut down vectors of control, non-governmental organizations. So the only thing that's left in Russia today are these long-term assets that have been, that were bought back in the 90s by the CIA and MI6 that can be activated as necessary. But now you've created new potential, because if you're, just think about it, you're Kirill Dmitriev, and Vladimir Putin has tapped you now to be the guy interfacing with Witkoff. So you have a meeting, you meet in the Kremlin. Putin's like, yeah, this is good. So Dmitriev now meets with Russians and says, the spirit of Alaska is real. Let's talk about so next time Dmitriev comes in, we have a plan of action for the Arctic that we can put on the table to lure America in. And so now he goes up to the Arctic and gets all these people to plan. And once you start planning, it's like anything. You start planning a vacation, you start seeing the vacation in your mind. I'm already on the beach in Hawaii. I'm already playing golf. I'm already, and then suddenly be told, no, you're not going on vacation. It's like a big disappointment. I want to go on vacation. I planned the vacation. I'm spending that money as we speak. And that's what's happening. He creates these commissions, these planning groups that start planning the future of Russia. I mean, the whole stupid tunnel thing, there's not going to be a tunnel. It's never going to happen. But Dmitriev's like, oh, we're going to have this Siberian-Alaskan tunnel. No, you're not. And if you ever did, it's not to bring American wealth into Russia. It's to suck Russian resources out of Russia, because that's the only thing the United States understands. We don't care about Russia. We don't care about Russia. We don't care about Russia. We don't care about Russian companies. We don't care about the Russian bottom line. We don't care about anything about Russia. All we want is Russian resources coming to America on terms that are acceptable to us. That's what it's all about. That's what the spirit of Alaska is. But even then it's a lie, because that implies that we want some sort of legitimate economic interaction between the United States and Russia. We don't. We want to use the promise of legitimate economic interaction to create a fifth column to achieve our ultimate objective. And again, I'm just saying this as loud as I can. The United States has been seeking to remove Vladimir Putin from office since the moment Vladimir Putin became president. It's a 25-year process in place. Come on, guys. Joe Biden went to Moscow in March of 2011 and told the Russian people, the opposition, straight up, it's not a good idea for Vladimir Putin to come back and be president of the United States. That's not a good idea. It's not good for Putin. It's not good for Russia. Could you imagine Dmitry Medvedev coming to the United States, and having a meeting in New York City with a bunch of bankers and stuff? Hey, it's not a good idea for J.D. Vance to run for president. Not a good idea. Not good for J.D. And not good for America. We think that the person that should be the person we pick. Our person. Americans would go, are you high? Get out of here. But Joe Biden did it in broad daylight, because that's what we were doing. We were undermining Russia. We've been undermining him forever. We don't like Vladimir Putin. We don't want to work with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin represents everything that we hate. You see, we were happy in the 1990s when Russia was on its knees crawling to us for crumbs. Oh, that made us so happy. And then Vladimir Putin taught Russia to stand up. We're like, whoa, what are you doing? Russia's not allowed to stand up. We won the Cold War. Get back down on your knees, Russia. Behave, heal. And Russia went, no, we're going to stand up. And then Putin taught them to love themselves, because there was a period of time in the 90s where Russia stopped loving itself. Russia went, oh, we're so bad, we're so inferior. We have to do what the West tells us to do. We have to be like the West. We want to be like the West. We want all the West stuff. Make us like the West, please. We'll do anything to be like the West. But now Putin went, hey, Russia's one of the great civilizations. Why don't you start being proud of being Russian? And the Russians looked around and went, yeah, we're pretty cool. And today the Russians are standing on their 2 feet, fully exercised, very proud of who they are. And we don't want this. We don't want to deal with Russia that is Russia. We want Russia to be defeated, supine, compliant, weak. We can't handle a Russia that stands on its own 2 feet and says, we're proud of who we are. Because the biggest threat Russia poses now is the fact that they don't want to be like us. Because that's how we control the world. That's how American hegemony works. We convince the relevant societies that you're inferior, that the only way that you can get a seat at the table is to be like us. We did it in Iran. We're doing it in Iran. Come on, guys. All those fancy Western stores. Come on, Iranian women, because we know who runs Iran. It's the women, just like they run everything in the world. And you can get that nice dress, and you can wear this nice makeup at home, and you can do this, that, and the other thing. We can take you to London so you can go shopping and all that stuff. Just tell your husband, hey, those Ayatollahs, they got to go. And then the wife whispers in your, honey, the Ayatollah's got to go. And then you get demonstration in the streets. That's a simplistic, comedic thing, but that's how it works. We play to the base desires of people. And instead of Iranian women waking up every morning going, I'm proud of being Iranian. I'm proud of my religion. I'm proud of my culture. I stand on my own 2 feet as a proud representative of Iranian society. See, that's what the West doesn't want. We want Iranian women going, oh, I want to be like those ladies in London. I want to be like those ladies in Paris. I want to go to New York because Iran sucks. No, same thing in Russia. We don't want the Russians looking around going, I'm proud of Russia. I'm proud of being a Russian. I think Russia's great. We want Russians to go, oh, Russia sucks. We want to be like the West. We need American help. We need America to send in their advisors like they did in the 1990s so that our society collapses. This is the goal and objective of the United States government. It's not just what Trump wants. Trump just happens to have a bunch of maniacs in power now who believe they can actually follow through on this. But it's been what the United States has wanted for 25 years. And Vladimir Putin has to wake up to this reality. Look, I have to wake up to this reality. I'm the guy that just spent the last 2.5 years traveling to Russia promoting U.S.-Russian friendship. What a load of shit I was selling. Oh, America wants to be your friend. No, we don't, apparently. And as long as the American public is infected by Russophobia, you can't trust the American people. There's individuals like myself and others who believe in this, but we're informed individuals. But until you break through the Russophobic hold on how Americans receive their information through academia, through the mainstream media, through government propaganda, the American people are infected. I mean, the stupidity I read in your chat and every other chat, I don't blame just you. The stupidity of the people in here who know nothing of Russia but act as if they do because they read a tweet by by Steve Witkoff or something. They're dumber than shit. To know Russia, you have to go to Russia. If you haven't been to Russia, if you haven't, dived into that, you don't know shit about Russia. So stop pretending you do. But this is the problem. America is controlled by ignorant people. It's sustained by the minds of ignorant people who think they know something and they know nothing whatsoever. And as long as this system exists, why should Russia be friends with us? I mean, Russia should always hold the door open and say, if you want to accept Russia on Russian terms, Russia will be your friend. But I think the day of Russia waiting for the West to come on over is over. Shut the damn door. Make us knock. Don't hold the door open for us. Shut the door. Seal yourselves off. We're your enemy. And most people are trying to destroy you. They act, in regards to Russia, not out of, a desire for friendship, but the desire to use friendship as a means of leveraging poisonous systems inside your society to bring it down. That's a sad statement, but it's the truth under the Trump administration. Whether we can change that, I don't know. But But I'm very depressed right now because I just spent a lot of time traveling to Russia promoting the concept of U.S. Russian relations. And I'm an honest person. I honestly believed in that. I honestly believed in that. I believed in that when I was there in November, although it was becoming harder and harder to do that. But today, after what my government has done, at the way the American people are responding to the actions of my government, America doesn't want to be friends with Russia. We don't know how to be friends with Russia. All we want to do is destroy Russia. And Russia needs to understand that and wake up to that reality.